So now we're gonna see how we create the pattern of what will be the metal framework, right? This is the maxillary denture. It's gonna be a maxillary denture. So this is the main connector, the saddles, and then we'll do the clasps and the counter clasps and secondary connectors. Now I'm going to use as much prefabricated elements as possible to make my work easy and to control the thicknesses, right? The main connector will be formed by 2 layers of calibrated wax, 0.4 millimeter each, so in total it's going to be 0.8. The second layer is a kind of rough, yeah, to make it more natural, you know, gum looking, gum feeling surface. So the thickness is gonna be like 0.8 to 1 millimeter to make it strong enough. So the first layer of wax is fixed to the duplicate model. I want to make sure there's no spaces that remain there, because then when I invest the second time, the investment material will go in there. I don't want that. Will go under this wax. I don't want that to happen. So it has to be very, very well connected. The connector needs to be as nice and thin as possible, but not forgetting that it has to be also resistant, strong enough. So now we add, you see, we add the second layer of wax. Where this connector goes in contact with the saddles is where the artificial teeth will sit here. Those zones, they have to be very, very well reinforced. Right? And on the other hand, we want a place, a shoulder-like structure, where the acrylic resin that holds the teeth will stop and continue with the metal. Okay, we'll see that later. So now we make it strong enough at that level. We kind of glue everything together. I mean, we make the wax stick well to the duplicate model, to the investment material of the duplicate model. So I don't want investment material in the second phase to get under this wax. So all the modeling that is necessary I can do now. It's here where the artificial teeth will have their gingival margin. So I can think about what I'll need to have when everything will be metal, all this will be metal, and I will have to place my artificial teeth. So slowly I create the structure in wax, the pattern, exactly as I want the metal to become, right, after I cast. Now this is the terminal edentulous crest, right? And here we use prefabricated wax patterns. Okay, and we cut the excess, of course. Like this. It's exactly over the zone that was modified, foliated with wax before. We don't want that to come in contact with the gum in the final denture, right? Only this one will be in contact. You see that red dot that went through the wax that has been placed there previously. So that's a hole where the metal, only there it touches the gum, and this is because when I inject or I press the acrylic resin, I don't want this to move. So this is just some sort of a static support for the denture when I place the acrylic resin. This is something that we'll see later. So this is similar to what we did to the acrylic partial denture. Similar. This has a window-like shape, right? But this is metal, and this time, obviously, it's way more resistant. It's one of the toughest alloys that we have. It is cobalt chromium. It's actually stainless steel material. So, but I need to do such a modeling that will ensure rigidity of the whole denture, right? Because there's huge forces, huge masticatory forces. Also, insertion and disinsertion of the denture will cause stress on the whole structure. So this is a windowed model. So the palate is free. Okay, the torus also is free. Much of the rugae is free. The AH line is at a distance, right? So this is at a distance from the gum. We don't want that metal to touch on the marginal periodontium because it may damage it, of course, and the patient will lose the teeth. So we want to avoid any trauma that the metal will give to the teeth or to the gums, right? So it has to be symmetric as much as possible, although the edentulous crests are asymmetric, but we want to make the denture as symmetric as possible. So as to be easily accepted by the patient, right? The patient should never touch with the tongue and say, oh, here is bigger, here is smaller, and no, that gives headaches to the patient, right? See all those margins that are kind of rounded? We don't want to have nice knife edge metal margins because that could really damage the gums. We rather prefer some rounded like margins, edges. Here, same. As we said, at a distance from the marginal periodontium. And once I'm done with that, I will apply the second layer of wax, as we said before, calibrated also, but a rough surface, textured surface actually. Okay. I can make it thicker in some points where I guess that it may break or it's too weak. The cobalt chromium alloy that we're going to use for casting is, I already said that, very strong. We want to make this wax as nice as possible because we don't want to do it afterwards when there's already metal, because this will give us hard time doing it in metal. It's better to model it nicely now while it's soft wax, because again, that alloy is very strong. Even when you want to retouch it, to mill it, the minimum thickness of this wax is 0.4. If it goes under 0.4, the metal will simply not go through. That alloy melts at around 1490 degrees Celsius, 1490, so quite high, quite high. It's one of the highest actually. So now it's the second layer that the technician is applying. You see it's textured. I warm it a little bit at a distance from the flame, of course, because otherwise the surface may be damaged. The calibration is very precise, yeah, 0.4. If I warm it too much, it may decrease because I can press it, and it's wax. So just to make sure that it sits nicely, okay, but not to modify the dimension, the thickness in any way. So I try to apply it as much as possible in intimate contact, first with the palette and then with the rest of the pattern going to the extremities. I take a scalpel and I trim the excess. It is sticky, it has to be sticky. And yes, this is the initial cut. We'll refine it just in a moment. Okay. Same on the other side. Nothing on the crest. It's just for the connector, remember? So we cut a little bit away from the very margin because we want to make sure that we'll have enough wax to cover the first layer. We'll refinish it just in a moment. So I don't want to damage the texture of that second layer of wax. Again, I cut the excess, nothing on the crest. Okay. Here the same, nothing where the artificial teeth will be placed. And see that the technician is doing now a little bit of a margin there, an elevated margin, look at it. Right. That's what I was saying. And there, the acrylic will stop and the metal will begin, right? But this will be reinforced just in a minute. So this is a support for the acrylic, pink acrylic resin. See, the excess is cut, and then at the junction there we need to place more wax. We'll do it. So now again we want to make sure that there's no that the junction is perfect between the wax and the investment material of the duplicate model, and that the two layers of wax are really united. We can only do that on the margin, obviously, because otherwise we damage the texture of our second layer, which we don't want to. See, that's what I was saying, that this region is reinforced. That's where metal and resin will join. In the frontal region, on the saddle, we place some retentions, actually some pins, on the middle of each space where the teeth will be placed, artificial teeth. Actually, this is a pin over which you will place the artificial tooth. And this is placed there to make sure that the tooth will not be displaced during mastication. This should not be too big, though, this pin, because then you won't have enough space for the for the teeth, right? So, well, the experience will tell the technician how big those pins need to be. They have to be very resistant, very strong at the same time, to prevent the breakage and eventually losing the frontal teeth, which obviously can be a catastrophe for the patient in some specific situations. So I'm modeling the wax. I want it to be even, smooth, nicely modeled there. Again, I fix it to the model, make sure there's no interspace there. So the investment material in the second time of investment should never get in between the two layers of wax, right? Because then everything will be compromised. So that's why I'm taking so much care and time into making sure there's no place in between the two layers of wax where the investment material in the second time of investment may penetrate, may leak. So this is the pattern of what will be the metal framework of our denture. Now we will continue doing the clasps and the secondary connectors. Clasps, counter clasps, and secondary connectors. They will be made mainly of prefabricated wax patterns.